Okay, and in this week between October 30 and November 5, what are the significant events in Asia and in the relations of the Philippines with China? Well, the first one, of course, this week is this. The team that pioneered Philippine climbing of the Mount Everest is now set to sail for China. After conquering Mount Everest, the Philippine adventurer who is part of a team, Karina Dayondon, is set to sail to China aboard a wooden replica of an ancient boat in the hopes of boosting national pride in a forgotten maritime prowess. Art Valdez, whom we interviewed here before, who led their Everest support team, is also heading the sailing mission and similarly sees the journey to China as a chance to inspire Filipinos. Quote, like Mount Everest, I want this to be symbolic of what our people can accomplish and of what can be possible out of the so-called impossible. Art Valdez at 69 said, the vessels are a copy of a balangay which date back as far as 320 AD. Their journey to the southeastern Chinese city of Guangzhou will be about 1,000 kilometers, and the crew members are aiming to do it with as little modern technical help as possible. Their trip is planned to commemorate a journey made 600 years ago by the Sultan of Sulu, Paduka Batara, who went to China to pay tribute to the Ming Dynasty Emperor Yongle. But Sultan Paduka Batara died on his way back home and is buried in Dazhou in Shandong. Maybe before we move on to the next item, let's show that short clip of Art and Miss Dayongdong, Art Valdez and Miss Dayongdong, when they were interviewed by the Manila Bulletin. Are we ready with that? As well as also the map of the route of the Philippine sailing team that is retracing the route of the Sultan of Sulu, Paduka Batara, I'm sorry. This is the balangay. There will be two balangay, but they are required by our authorities to be accompanied by a motorized boat also for their security and safety, as well as also the Chinese counterparts insisted on this. And so they'll be sailing from Luzon this time, not from Sulu, because they made a trip, they made a journey already from Sulu.
Anytime by a super tanker, by a very large carrier. Because we have no night sailing capability. That was my greatest fear.
Mahirap sa babae umihi kasi wala namang CR, open lahat. So, bahala na. Sila na lang pipikit ang mata pag nakita nila na mag-ihi na ako. And then, sa food, minsan nasusuka ka kasi maalon. So, pag maalon talaga, malilate yung kain mo.
Okay, so that is a short clip, and we thank the Manila Bulletin for that. I am sorry we apparently missed the map of the route. Okay, so let's wait and we will monitor the progress of our balangay in that journey from Luzon to Hong Kong, Shantou, Xiamen, and Zhuangzhou. And the original trip of the Sultan of Sulu from Zhuangzhou went through the Grand Canal towards Beijing. We don't know what the other arrangements are. I think they have been working this out with the Chinese authorities on the other side. Okay, let's move on to the other important item this week, China's Premier Li to visit the Philippines. This was announced way back in October. The Chinese Premier Li Keqiang is expected to visit the Philippines in the coming week during the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN Summit. Quoting the report, share new proposals and initiatives of cooperation, unquote, and to show greater appreciation for Manila's deepening rapport with Beijing. Counselor Ethan Sun Yi of the Chinese embassy said Li's visit is, quote, first of this kind by a Chinese premier in 10 years, unquote, and is expected to take place in about 2 weeks. That was last October. Premier Li will meet with President Duterte as well as with other officials, including Senate President Aquilino Pimentel III and Speaker Pantaleon Alvarez. The Chinese premier, quote, will share China's new proposals and initiatives of cooperation for win-win results, unquote, the counselor said. China is now the Philippines' largest trading partner, largest import market, and fourth largest export destination, noting that the two countries' bilateral trade volume hit $28 billion from January to July this year, or a 7.6% year-on-year increase. China is now working hard to achieve the 1 million Chinese tourist arrival to the Philippines before the year ends, but said that around 550,000 Chinese visited the Philippines in the first 7 months of the year, the second biggest tourist arrivals, next only to South Korean. China is set to build 2 bridges over the Pasig River in a bid to alleviate the traffic problem in the metropolis, and, quote, groundbreaking ceremonies are expected, and reportedly by Premier Li Keqiang during his visit. So we got that scoop, and this has not yet been publicly announced, this groundbreaking. Okay, and next, region-wide, China and South Korea agreed to mend ties after the THAAD, the Terminal High Altitude Aerial Defense Missiles standoff. Seoul and Beijing on the recent Tuesday agreed to move beyond a year-long standoff over the deployment of a U.S. anti-missile system in South Korea, a dispute that has been devastating to South Korean businesses that rely on Chinese consumers. The installation of the U.S. Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System had angered China, with South Korea's tourism, cosmetics, and entertainment industries bearing the brunt of a backlash, although Beijing has never specifically linked THAAD to the economic decline. Beijing worries that the THAAD system's powerful radar can penetrate into Chinese territory and actually monitor Chinese defenses. South Korea recognized China's concern over THAAD and made it clear the deployment was not aimed at any third country and did not harm China's strategic security interests, China's foreign ministry said. The spat knocked out 0.4 percentage points off this year's expected South Korean economic growth, according to the Bank of Korea, which now forecasts an expansion of 3%. And an unofficial report that we got is that South Korea agreed not to add to the THAAD missile deployment, which the U.S. still wants to expand. So that is one concession, I think, that has helped assuage China's concerns. Next, again, with China's efforts to mend fences across the region, Xi vows to promote healthy, stable development of China-Vietnam ties. And this is Dateline Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping on Monday called for joint efforts to promote the sustained, healthy, and stable development of relations between China and Vietnam. Xi also the Secretary General of the Communist Party of China Central Committee, made the remarks during a meeting with Hoang Bin Chuan, Special Envoy of Nguyen Phu Trong, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committee. Hoang is also head of the Commission for External Relations of the Communist Party of Vietnam Central Committee. The new leadership of the CPC Central Committee will work with the CPV Central Committee, leadership headed by Nguyen Phu Trong, to deepen strategic communication, enhance political mutual trust, implement important consensus, and properly handle related issues in order to promote sustained, healthy, and stable development of bilateral ties, President Xi said. So, we have 4 items. We have a few minutes. What would you like to comment on,
Well, the mending of the economic ties and diplomatic ties between South Korea and China improved significantly the security situation in this part of Asia, because as we all know, China can influence North Korea with regards to the fears of the South Koreans. So it's an important development. And also the closer ties between the two parties, the Communist Party of China and the Communist Party of Vietnam, will also augur well for us because it will improve the security situation and the economic situation, and the Philippines will be favorably affected.
Well, my first comment is on the adventure and the endeavor of Art Valdez and his team sailing to China to replicate the journey of the Sultan of Sulu. This is to remind the nation of the long history of friendship, cooperation, fraternity of China and the Philippines, which is now being restored.
Long before the Spaniards came to the
Long before the
Philippines.
Spaniards came, especially much longer before the Americans came and then the Japanese. And so...
The trip was made by Sultan Paduka Pahala sometime in the 1400s.
Yes, 1410 maybe.
Yeah, 1410.
1412, somewhere there. But, and of course, we're very happy to welcome Premier Li Keqiang to the Philippines in the coming week. And we hope the groundbreaking is not delayed by anything, because on the one hand, China is very eager to get all these projects moving ahead in the earnest desire to show the goodwill to the Filipino people. On the other hand, we have traditionally, the Philippines, this bureaucratic logjam that also legal issues, right-of-way issues, and so on, sometimes TROs. We hope nothing of that nature comes about to disturb the scheduled groundbreaking. And of course, it's all good news, both the mending of ties of South Korea and China, as well as Vietnam and China. I think both South Korea and Vietnam also realizes that there is no choice but to have constructive, friendly relations with China. This is not only going to be the powerhouse in this century of Asia's economic engine, but also of the global economic engine.
Because the Chinese consumers are now empowered with so much purchasing power that South Korea and Vietnam can really sell their products to the big market of China.
This past year of tension between China and South Korea cost South Korea 30% of its previous trade and tourism with China.
Yeah, one South Korean corporation alone suffered a lot.
I think they, Lotte, suffered around $800 million in lost sales.
Because one of their properties was used to locate the
where
missile.
the THAAD are deployed. You know? And of course, Vietnam, we have come to know Vietnam as one of the more militant on their disputes with China. But again, every time we look at the developments there, it is the improving relations between... in fact, China and Vietnam just started their joint patrol at the Gulf of Tonkin, or Beibu Gulf. So, all good news this week in our front, Philippine-China relations, and in the Asian region. We'll be discussing President Xi Jinping's speech at the 19th National Congress of the CPC in our Philippine-China focus. So stay with us until our next segment.